Yeah, no, I need to make an order. Yeah, okay, so 86 pepperoni, cheese, tomato pizzas. Sorry, hi. Welcome back. Well, this session is something we've all been looking forward to. It's our Moot, OK? And I'm finally going to find out what hats have got to do with it. So welcome, Gwen and Sophia, to the studio. Now, I'm very excited about this. We've been looking forward to it all day. I have asked pretty much every academic from the Open University Law School what moots have got to do with hats, and I have not been able to get a categorical answer. That said, I haven't been able to get a categorical answer about very much. It seems that there are lots of complexities involved with various things. So you have come from the Open University Law Society, and we're going to have a moot. I'm really excited.
Yes, that's right, yes. And in terms of what moots have got to do with hats, well, it's all to do with the interpretation of a law on hats, which a lot of people don't know exists.
OK, so Mohan says that his mum used to put him through Moot, so he's, when he was younger, so he's going to be very familiar with this whole idea about arguing about hats.
Not necessarily, because moots aren't all about hats, but the moot that we're going to do tonight is based around a law on hats. OK. And so that's the connection, really.
OK, so some people tell me that mooting is fun. Which I hope it is, yes. And you two do it. So how does this work then with the Open University Law Society? You go around mooting, do you, with other teams?
Yes, that's right. We act as a body to help encourage bringing students together in this activity. I think it's probably worth saying a little bit about what a moot is about, really, because it's not something that is a. Sometimes it's a word that people are familiar with, but they're not necessarily sure what it means. I mean, the word moot comes from Greek, which just means meet. Yeah, a meeting. It just means a meeting of people together. We have to
clarify because we had an issue with burkinis, so we're talking meat in the non-food sense.
We're talking, yes, indeed, yes. No Lady Gaga type objects or anything like that. No, it just means meet, a meeting of people coming together, and then that was then used to talk about the ancient courts, etc., and it's now used to describe an academic exercise relating to arguing a particular case. It's there to enable students to practice their advocacy skills, to be able to represent a particular cause or a particular case. It's not the same as a mock trial. Some people think, oh, it's like a mock trial, isn't it? Where, you know, maybe people get together and have witnesses and examine witnesses and find somebody's either guilty or not guilty. A moot is one level above that. Imagine the trial has already taken place. A decision has been made, and now it's going to appeal. Somebody who on the losing side of that decision wasn't happy about the decision, and they want to appeal that decision, but the only thing that they're allowed to appeal that decision on is points of law. They want to be able to say that this case was wrongly decided because they didn't take into consideration this particular statute or this particular case that had previously been decided. And that's what a moot is all about. It's all about being able to argue either for the person appealing or for the person responding to the appeal using existing case law that's already out there to illustrate their points, to say it should have been decided this way because of this Supreme Court case that means everything else needs to be decided in a similar way.
OK, so is it fun then, Sophia?
It is fun. It can be quite nerve-wracking.
I bet.
You've got to do your preparations, make sure you're ready, and if you're good on your feet, you'll be fine.
But it's not just about being good, it's about luck, because I hear you brought your lucky lectern.
I did, yes.
So I don't think we've got any drum rolls. Let's see the lectern.
Here is Lexi.
Woohoo!
As you can see, if you can see a close-up with the little OU symbol there.
Is that it?
Yeah, I don't know.
You told me... No, I've got this in writing. You told me that this was a lucky lectern. It had been made from an oak tree and that you had won some very prestigious... And this is it, and you take this around.
We take this around, yes. This was originally fashioned from an oak tree that was in the garden of one of the students who I was initially coaching with mooting. and we decided that we needed something to practice with. So the next time we came together, he'd actually knocked this sort of Flintstone-style thing together. And we've used it actually in some live moots where they've not had a lectern present, and we brought our own lectern and said, like, oh, it's all right, we've got this. And normally you plonk it on a table and away you go. But obviously, if you haven't got a table or something, then it's not quite so useful. So I'm not quite sure what you're going to do.
Well, yeah.
Is that in the way? Should I?
Yeah, it is. It is nice, but you can see we're very, very glamorous here. And I actually think we should get you something a bit bigger, a bit grander, a bit taller.
Is that something you can manage?
Oh, yeah, sure, I can call a States. Hello, yes. I need a lectern, please. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, a very large, tall one, very grand. Open University, please. Chop, chop. Right, that'll be here in a couple of minutes.
Chop, chop, literally.
Oh, yeah.
Someone order a lectern.
Thank you very much. Marvellous. There you are. See? It's not that hard.
Well, there we go.
OK. I think we're all ready to moot.
Yeah, OK.
Yeah?
Well, why
Shall
not?
we see what's happening on the hot deck, Sophie and Kristen? Looking very splendid in your hats.
Thank you. Thought I'd put my formal hat on for this round.
Yes, no, exactly. It's all about procedure.
Of course. We have had a hat selfie in from Davin as well on Twitter. Thank you very much. I've just retweeted that one. The conversation has sort of now gone into dinner. I think everyone's getting a little bit hungry. But we have got some really good questions, actually. I do have one.
Question.
Yes. Oh, well, we do have one from Shirin, who has asked whether you consider online workshops and moots for those who are unable to attend the traditional ones. So we have quite a few people who can't attend for ill health, or because there's quite a few that are actually abroad. Like we've got some people in Canada and America. So do you have any sort of online workshops, or do you know of any maybe that you could direct them to at all? Or
Yeah, do you do online mooting?
Not as of yet, but funnily enough, that comes up. We were just talking with a lady out in the corridor there who said that a platform should soon be available. So watch this space. Keep your eye on the updates on the website. And
Now, how do people connect with the Open University Law Society? Have you got email?
yes, we've got email addresses. We've got our own website, Facebook, Twitter. Everything is available online. Just get in touch and we'll be there to help you.
Excellent. All right. And we'll put those links up in the chat for you so that you can connect with the Law Society if you would like to. Right, so for this moot, we need to outline the case first, don't we?
We do indeed.
Okay.
And this is the whole hat-related thing. So, as I said, you remember that I spent some time in the clink earlier on today. There was a bit of a misunderstanding about headwear.
Yes.
And Section 1 of the Inappropriate Hats Act states that a person who wears a hat when the conditions are unsuitable shall be guilty of an offence.
Oh, I need those two. I'm really sorry. They're so important in terms of feeding the chattern.
yeah, we have quite an important job, discuss food, make people hungry.
Kristen, you don't need to comply.
It's arguable whether or not this only applies to being in a public place, but I wouldn't worry necessarily because they have to show that the use of the hat was actually unreasonable. Now, I would actually say that hat that you're currently wearing is quite an appropriate use of a hat. It's all down to whether or not. You see, this is the whole point, and this is great for a moot. When you've got a particular law that's perhaps a little bit ambiguous, what does it actually mean when the conditions are unsuitable? What you need is case law that refines that. It provides a little bit more illustration. So when cases go to court and they get reported, they set a binding precedent that other cases then have to follow. So we've got a few other cases here that will give us a little bit more of a framework, if you like, that will actually tell us what may or may not be inappropriate. So, first of all, let's talk about our case here that we're going to argue. It's the case of John. Now, John was found guilty of wearing a hat in unsuitable conditions. John was arrested for wearing a ski hat with ear covers.
I can see why.
Yeah. So he was arrested for wearing a ski hat with ear covers on Weymouth Beach in August. John is bald as well. That's all of the facts we have about John. The next case is one that was decided previously, which is the case of Adam. Now, Adam was found guilty of the crime when wearing a black ski hat in July. Now, the principle that was established in that case was that it was a long-established principle that an offence was committed by wearing a woolen hat when the temperature is above 20 degrees C, as this would be regarded as unsuitable conditions. So that's Adam's case. The next case we need to look at is Basil's case. Now, Basil, who is bald, was found not guilty of the crime when wearing a cream-coloured straw hat. We're going to run out of room on the table there, aren't we?
That's all right.
In June.
I can rearrange them. See?
So, yes, cream-coloured straw hat in June. Now, the principle there was that protection from the sun amounted to the use of a hat in suitable conditions, and therefore it did not infringe the law. And then finally, we've got Callum. Now, Callum's case was that he was found not guilty of the crime when wearing a ski hat with a houndstooth pattern in May on a day of variable temperatures.
Some people would say the pattern alone is just a crime.
I wouldn't argue with that. I wouldn't argue with that indeed. It looks like somebody's actually, I'm sure there's a Volkswagen Golf somewhere with a hat-shaped hole cut out of the seat. Am I allowed to mention car?
No, you're not. We'll get in trouble.
Okay, I'm going to end up in the clink again at this rate, aren't I?
Oh, yeah, you certainly are. And it took a lot to get you out of there.
I know.
Hours and hours. I can't
Exactly,
believe it.
yeah, I'm very
Actually,
grateful
we've
to,
got HJ in there now. Oh, dear.
Oh,
He
dear.
doesn't look very happy, I'll be honest.
He doesn't actually, does he? No, I know how he feels.
I wonder what he did. Probably his messy desk.
Possibly. So Callum's case, he was found not guilty of the crime of wearing a houndstooth ski hat in May on the day on variable temperatures. The principle there was that wearing a hat which matched the surrounding countryside could be regarded as ecologically sound and therefore a suitable use of a hat. So these are the cases that we need, the case of Adam, Basil and Callum. These are the cases that we're going to use to decide whether or not John's case was correctly decided. I'm going to represent John, and I'm going to argue that John's case was incorrectly decided and that the conviction should be overturned, that he should be found not guilty. And then Sophia is then going to briefly come back to my submissions afterwards with some of her own to argue that actually the case was correctly decided. So Sophia will be representing the Crown Prosecution Service, or the respondent in this matter, to say that it was correctly decided.
So we need to do this properly
Yes.
and get to the correct state of mind.
Do we have a judge?
Yes,
We could really do with a judge.
we do. Hang on
Go
a
on.
moment. Here's Judge Foley. I'll be 1 sec. There we go.
Blimey.
I'm ready. I told you I've been very excited. This is a curtain, by the way. Right.
Well, I get this wrong. It's curtains for me, I think.
OK. Are you
So-
going to stand at our fabulous lectern and argue your case?
OK. Well, I feel a little bit more comfortable with Lexi, to be honest with you, but
Well,
I
you
think...
can't have it. It's not big enough.
You're
I'm very
absolutely
sorry.
right there.
You might be unlucky this time. I
Yes.
might win.
Yes. Well, actually, you don't really win.
No?
You just decide who wins.
OK,
That's
good,
the
good.
whole
I can
point
do
of the
that. And
judge.
then I have this hammer, do I? And
Well, you can if you like, yes. I mean, normally a hammer would be where you're dealing a verdict, but I don't know whether or not you're going to be able to decide at the end of this appeal whether or not... Normally judges retire for a
the
period of
bar.
time to... well, yeah, possibly.
that's where I'm going later.
Whatever. I don't like to pry too much into the activities of the judiciary after they've retired from court.
Right.
But
so, are
if
you
we're
going to
ready,
argue your case?
I'm going to argue the case for Callum. Now, I need to get into character here.
Yes, you do.
Because,
I'm in character. I've made an effort.
yeah, because the thing about moots is that they're all very formal. There's a very formal way of speaking, which involves you've got to have respect for the court and the judge and the way that you address the judge. So I will be referring to you as my lady. And this is it. So when you're ready, perhaps you'd like to use your gavel to signal me on, and I can start.
I'll just bang it, do I?
Go on, why not? Give it a bang.
Order, order.
My lady.
This is good.
My lady, my name is Gwyn Hopkins, and I appear for the appellant, John, who was convicted of wearing a hat in unsuitable conditions, contrary to Section 1 of the Inappropriate Hats Act 2003. On appeal to the High Court by way of case stated, Mr. Justice Milliner upheld the conviction, stating that he was bound by the precedent set of the case in The Crown and Adam, reported in 2008 in volume 1 of the Weekly Law Reports, beginning at page 216. My learned friend Miss Sari appears for the respondent, the Crown Prosecution Service. Before I begin, may I check that you have a copy of my skeleton argument and bundle?
Yes, thank you.
I have two submissions, my lady. The first relates to the thermal properties of a hat in relation to the person wearing it. And the second is the test for suitability of a hat is a subjective one, and it is dependent upon the prevailing conditions of the and also of the properties of the hat wearer himself. If it pleases the court, I will now begin with my first submission, which you will find at paragraph 2 of the skeleton argument.
Yes, please proceed.
My lady, in my first submission is this. Mr. Justice Milliner erred in applying the principle established in the case of Adam. The true principle in The Crown and Adam was that where the primary function of the hat was that of protection from the cold, such a function was of no benefit and therefore inappropriate when the temperatures were so high as not to justify deployment. I'd like to draw your ladyship's attention to the judgment of Lord Justice Beret at page 220. If I can direct you to tab 3 of the bundle. And
Lord Justice Berry, what an appropriate name.
at page 220, my lady.
Do they often get this wrong? Tab 3, is it? 220, OK.
I believe you have sight of the case now, my lady. That's right. So I'm just going to read the section at the bottom of page 220 that you can see there. Lord Justice Beret says, Mr. Bobble, QC, for the appellant, submitted that it was not possible to show beyond all reasonable doubt that the conditions in which his client sported the headwear were inappropriate. However, whilst the burden of proof may lie on the prosecution to prove all facts beyond reasonable doubt, the issue here is not one of fact, but one of law, set out by statute and illuminated by previous cases decided before us. In this regard, I have no trouble in concluding that it was wholly inappropriate for someone possessing the characteristics of the appellant to be wearing a ski hat in the middle of summer. He had no need of protection from the cold, and in fact, such an item in the prevailing conditions would likely more have been a discomfort than a benefit. Now, my lady, in this case, in the case of Adam, he had a full head of hair. It was therefore clearly not necessary for him to be wearing a ski hat in hot weather. But in our case, the appellant was bald. Therefore, he cannot be compared to the defendant, Adam.
But Mr. Hopkins, even if the appellant did get some of the benefits of the hat on account of his baldness, was it still appropriate to be wearing it in summer? After all, if he gets used to its protection in the summer months, isn't there a danger that he wouldn't feel the benefit of it in the winter?
Well, that's a very good point, my lady. But what I would say is this, is that there are different levels of protection that can be afforded from different hats. So whilst a thin woolen hat may be offering some level of protection, when the winter months draw in, there's nothing to stop the appellant from actually wearing an even warmer hat. And so therefore, he would still be able to derive an element of benefit from a warmer hat in the winter. He wouldn't necessarily feel a benefit. So it is my submission that that the hat was appropriate because there were even warmer and thicker hats that he could wear in the winter. May I continue, my lady?
Yes, please continue.
I'm grateful. My second submission, my lady, is this. The circumstances in the case of Adam are not consistent with the instant case, the case that we're talking about of John. Regardless of the time of year, John requires a greater than usual protection from cold snaps on account of his baldness. I'd like to direct your ladyship to tab 4 of the bundle. And the paragraph 71 at the bottom of that page that you're on, my lady. Here, this is the judgment of Lord Trilby of Panama. And he says, at paragraph 71, the following. He says, the test is a subjective one. What may be appropriate for one man may be wholly inappropriate for another. In my judgment, it seems plain to me that regardless of the prevailing conditions or ambient temperatures, there will be circumstances where a bald man will be in need of the protection of such headwear, regardless of the time of year.
Counsel, Lord Trilby says in need of such headwear, which suggests that a particular type of headwear is quite important. So exactly what type of hat was Basil wearing?
Well, my lady, it was a straw hat. It was a straw hat with a brim.
Well, then surely that was sensible protection from the sun without being too hot for the person wearing it. Surely you can't say that a ski hat that covers the ears is equally suitable in the summer?
What I would say, my lady, is that a straw hat with a brim may be useful purely for protection from the sun. But what we have here in this situation, the appellant was on Weymouth Beach. It was windy. We know it was windy. It says so in the facts of the case. And therefore, he probably should also be afforded a level of protection from the heat. But in addition to that, the windy conditions would be such that it would be completely inappropriate for a very light hat with a brim to be worn. In such conditions, the hat would simply blow off his head, and then he'd be left with no hat and no protection whatsoever. And that surely would be more inappropriate than a ski hat where you could tie the flaps around and make sure it was nice and secure. So I would suggest there, my lady, that because of the windy conditions, it was completely appropriate for the appellant to be wearing such headwear. And unless I can be of further assistance, my lady, that completes my submissions. And I would just like to conclude that in light of these, I respectfully request that the court allows this appeal. Now, before I go, I'd just like to say that obviously my learned friend, Ms. Sari, for the Crown, will have some response to my submissions, and I would invite you to hear her now.
We shall, indeed.
My lady, as indicated by my learned friend, Mr. Hopkins, I am Sophia Sari, and I am counsel for the respondent. If it please the court, I submit that the judge at first instance, Mr. Justice Milliner, was correct in his findings. For clarity, I will dispense with case summaries and reference to specific paragraphs within the judgments due to time constraints.
Yes, we are very short on time.
Thank you, my lady. My first submission relies on Adam's case. My learned friend for the appellant sought to distinguish John's case from Adam's. The facts of these cases are so materially similar that it is respectfully submitted that the court cannot disregard this case. The court must follow the principles established and apply them to John's case. Adam was also wearing a ski hat during summer, as John was.
What do you say to the fact that Adam was bald?
That is a pertinent question, my lady, and I will go on to answer that in my submission. My learned friend suggested that it may have been cold, leading John to need to wear the hat to protect his bald head. This is speculation, my lady, and there is nothing within the facts of the case to suggest that the reason John was breaking the law was because he was cold. Findings of fact must be considered by the court at first instance and cannot be discovered through this appellate court. In the alternative, had the weather been warm that day, John could not use this as an excuse for breaking the law. He could have worn a canvas hat, as was the situation in Basil's case, or a straw hat. The defendant in that case was also bald, and he donned a straw hat to protect himself from the sun. The distinguishing characteristic in this case, as opposed to John's case, was the suitability of the hat. In Adam's case, the ski hat was not reasonable in the unsuitable conditions, and in the same as John's case, it was not reasonable. In Basil's case, it was reasonable to wear a canvas hat in suitable conditions. The point of law here, my lady, is that John's hat was wholly inappropriate on a beach in summer, regardless of the weather.
What do you say then to Mr. Hopkins' suggestion that a canvas hat would not be appropriate in windy conditions?
I see your point there, my lady. The measures that could be taken to mitigate any detriment arising from wearing a straw or canvas hat, such as string that ties under the neck to secure a hat, or even by dispensing with a hat altogether and using a parasol, were available to John, but he did not use those options. My lady, my further submission is that for this court to allow John's appeal would open the floodgates to give carte blanche to those who want to wear hats in unsuitable conditions. This would clearly go against the intention of Parliament, and as such, John's appeal should be dismissed. My lady, my final submission is that the case at hand should be distinguished from Callum's case. It is submitted that the hat John wore did not match his surroundings, namely the beach. It is unreasonable to suggest that a ski hat would be in keeping with the surroundings of a beach. And unless I can assist the court any further, this concludes my submissions, and it is respectfully requested that the appeal is dismissed. Thank you, my lady.
Well, that was confusing. What do I do now?
Who do you think won?
Yes.
Well, this is a very, very difficult thing. I'm going to ask to go to the hot desk and see what everyone at home thinks.
There's a hot debate going on actually at the moment. We've got parasols being mentioned. Why can't people use parasols? We've had feelings. It's about how people feel, if they're cold, if they're ill. Maybe it's the only hat he owned, said Davin. So lots of different responses here.
Yeah, or whether there should even, there should be a law that would prevent someone from wearing a hat if they just wanted to. I'm not quite sure. I mean, the one thing, not to make too much light of it, but they all think you make a great judge, Karen.
Well, I was just going to say that perhaps people shouldn't be discriminated against if they can only, say, for example, afford to have one hat.
Yes. Yeah, and someone mentioned about how the person feels. If they feel okay in the hat, then why is it a problem? So I don't know the answer to that.
Stuart, I'm not allowed to hang them.
You'd need a black hat for that, wouldn't you?
Oh yes, I would. I don't have one of them. I've only got a curtain.
I mean, just in quite earlier conversation, we were talking about people having the right to choose what they wear. So, linking it to that, if you can choose what you like to wear, you can wear a hat or three.
I see you have chosen to wear a selection of hats.
I couldn't pick, and I feel a bit bland today. I've got black jumper on, and I had a white beret. I wanted to add some colour, so purple tartan.
Bit of solidarity for John there.
And you have plenty of lovely hair, Sophie, so...
Je suis Jean.
People seem to think that there should be some medical expert advice to help make the decision as well, so...
I think this is a democratic thing. I'm going to bow out and I'm going to ask the audience at home, OK, do you agree or disagree? Should Gwyn's argument stand? Do you agree or disagree? Let's see what people say. We're going to set that widget up in a moment and we're going to ask you whether you think you agree that Gwyn should win or you disagree. And then we're going to ask about Sophia. Should she win or not? OK, so firstly, we're going to have a look at Gwyn. Just wait for those results to come in.
In the meantime, Rubina thinks you're very funny.
I'm trying to be funny. I'm trying to be serious.
This is a serious issue.
It is a serious issue.
There was talk about making this into a soap, a monthly series.
Monthly series, yes.
By the way, Sophie, have you heard from HJ?
Well, I have heard a bit of a rumour. Obviously, HJ's just there. I heard he committed a bit of a crime against fashion, turned up to his tutorial in an inappropriate hat.
Oh, no.
I mean, there's a rumour that it was a fez. So...
Oh, he hasn't taken... He had that fez last night. I saw him have it, and I keep saying, don't wear it. It's not. It's red. It's awful.
He could be in there a little while.
It's quite bizarre.
We had this thing where we agreed that wearing a hat helped you study, but I don't think there's any evidence to suggest that might be the case.
Was it a performance-enhancing hat?
No, it was a fez.
A performance-enhancing fez.
I mean, I think there's an invention there. I'd trademark that one.
Yeah, exactly.
He's going to be furious if he watches this. OK, the results are in. OK, so whether we agree that Gwyn should win, let's see. 1/3 agree. 2/3 disagree. Sorry, Gwyn.
Oh, well, you're obviously the better advocate on the day, Sophia. I take my hat off to you.
Oh, man. Is it because you went second? Because I sort of felt like the argument was getting a little bit more clear and solid because of the order effect. Is that having an impact?
Yes, definitely. I knew what Gwyn had said, and so I could rebut what he had said. So I had the upper hand in this case. But as in any courtroom, you might have a right to respond. So who knows? It might have turned out differently had Gwyn rebutted my arguments. It's a moot point, so it can go either way.
OK, well, get through this curtain. It's ridiculous, quite frankly. So how does it go then when you're going around and doing these moots? I mean, you must have to prepare a lot, but I guess you don't know what the other team are going to say, and this is what makes it interesting. So how much preparation is involved in this?
There's a lot of strategy involved in terms of wondering what the other team are going to prepare. One of the requirements of the moot is to make sure that you follow the spirit of the competition. So you shouldn't really be ambushing. That's the whole reason why we have these things that are called skeleton arguments that you exchange a few days before the moot, which is an outline of what you're going to say. that will tell you, that will give an indication of what you're going to say. But sometimes there's always a temptation to just sort of hide, put something in there which they may interpret one way, but actually when it comes to being on your feet, you make some sort of sideline point which they think, oh, I wasn't expecting that, and can maybe catch them off guard. So there is a lot of strategy in it, because it's a trade-off between being courteous and respecting the court and winning, basically, but not necessarily at all costs. Yeah, but there's an awful lot of preparation, isn't there? I mean, you have to read some of the cases that you have to read.
Hundreds of pages long.
And how does this help you then in your studies? Because it seems like a lot of hard work, but it does, to be fair, seem a lot of fun also. And I guess, you'd mentioned about developing arguments and analytical skills and being able to, I guess, compare and contrast certain aspects. Does it help you in your studies?
Absolutely. You can start to understand why some of the points of law are made. You can understand how the law works. It's great to figure out how to do it. So once you get mooting, your studies will become easier in the long run, because you can make a reasoned argument based on both sides.
Let's see what's going on the hot desk, because we're going to need to close this very, very soon. So, Sophie and Kristen.
Yes, so most people are agreeing that there wasn't enough evidence. They wanted medical evidence, they wanted weather records, they were quite demanding, actually.
Yes, they were. We didn't have anything to give them.
The sample set, similar physiologies, there was all sorts going on, so you made some very good points. It was very good. I think everyone really enjoyed it. They enjoyed all the acting, so very well done.
Yes.
Thank you to everyone. I have just put something in the chat, but I would just like to remind people that if you sent in a picture, please do send us your address, because without that we can't really get anything to you. So send through your address and which post you'd like to studenthub@open.ac.uk, and we can get that out to you. Thank you ever so much for taking part in those. It's nice to have had your pictures in and to really see what other people have been doing at home and things like that. All the hat selfies and things have been great, so thank you.
Oh, it has been wonderful. Kristen, can we have your final words?
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. I've enjoyed this whole day, and thank you everybody for participating. It was great. Absolutely great day.
It has been wonderful, and it has been great that so many students from the Open University Business School and the Open University Law School have come together. So thank you so much for coming. This is all we have time for. If you haven't had a chance to engage with other activities, as I've said earlier, there's plenty around on the catch-up to help you gear up for your module start. But it has been an absolute pleasure, and thanks to all our participants involved throughout this whole day. You guys have been great, and we do Student Hub Live events much like this around a whole range of topics. So if you'd like to keep informed about those, select the Count Me In button on the website and give us your email address, and then we'll add you to our mailing list and let you know when another event is on. I'll tell you, we've got one in about 3 weeks' time, which is when a lander is landing on Mars, I believe. So we're going to find out about that on Friday, the 21st of October from 12 till 2. So come along to that, please. Let us know how you found this event. There's a feedback form on the website. It's very quick to fill in. We'd just like to know what you've thought, if you've got any ideas, and to share your experiences of this event with us. So please do take a chance to feedback. As Sophie says, our email box is always there. It's always manned. So let us know if you've got any questions that we haven't been able to answer, or again, any comments. studenthub@open.ac.uk. I'd also like to thank everybody else who's been involved behind the scenes to make this event happen. And that is all from us here at the Student Hub. So thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening. The chat will be open for another half an hour or so for you to say your goodbyes, connect with each other, join those Facebook groups, join your LinkedIn profile, etc. And thank you so much for coming. See you very soon.